Good Friday afternoon, and thanks for joining us on Kare 11 News Now. I'm Lauren Lemanchek. When you head out the door today, make sure you grab a raincoat or an umbrella. We've got showers basically all day today. There is not a great chance of severe weather, but some places could see up to 6 inches of rain. We'll check in with the weather team for a full look at the forecast in just a little bit. This weekend, a host of new laws take effect in Minnesota, among them a law banning AI nudification. That law is meant to protect people from having their picture used to create deep-fake pornographic images without their consent. It poses steep fines for tech companies allowing it to happen. There's also a host of new laws surrounding domestic violence, including a clearer process for firearms surrender. The new laws also allow police more time to arrest a suspect accused of misdemeanor domestic violence before a warrant is needed. The laws come nearly 1 year after the killing of Mariah Samuels, a Minneapolis woman murdered by her ex-boyfriend. Her family continues to play a big role in advocating for more victim protections.
To think that all these things weren't in place before kind of gives you a feel of how much they care about people who are suffering from this.
2 laws going into effect tomorrow are a direct result of the lawmaker attacks last June that killed State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband and injured Senator John Hoffman and his wife. The first increases penalties for impersonating law enforcement. Vance Belter, the man convicted in the attacks, outfitted his vehicle to look like a police car and then dressed like an officer to get lawmakers to open their doors. Offenders can face 2 to 5 years or more, depending on if they have a firearm or have done it before. The second new law requires police to disclose when chemical irritants are used in a building. The Hortman's son, Colin, testified at the Capitol about the difficult and expensive process he and his sister went through to clean their parents' home after the shooting. That includes use of smoke screens, pepper spray, tear gas, and flashbangs. New this afternoon, President Trump is speaking out about the recent cyber attacks against water systems in Minnesota.
We heard in Minnesota there was a cyber attack and they blame it on Iran. I don't think so. I blame it on Minnesota because they're grossly incompetent. There was a cyber attack of 30 water plants, and I would blame it on Minnesota and the governor, the corrupt governor of Minnesota. They like to say, oh, it was Iran. Iran should be so lucky. Iran's got bigger problems than worrying about Minnesota.
Governor Walz responded this afternoon on X, saying that the president knows exactly who's behind the cyber attack and says Trump's words show he does not have a plan to win the war with Iran. This week, the FBI said that water systems in 7 states were targeted by hackers. And according to the New York Times, Iran could be behind at least some of them. Here's Kent Erdahl.
Leaders in some metro suburbs like Plymouth.
We've never had a similar incident, so this is the first.
We're not the only ones who had to contend with a coordinated cyber attack that struck 36 Minnesota water systems earlier this week.
Small cities like ours, we have a city hall staff of 3.
So did Nate George.
And, a public works staff of 2.
The mayor of Brown, which is about 65 miles north of the metro. He says they, like the other impacted cities, got systems back up with no ransom threats or disruptions to service or water quality, which begs the question.
Who could be behind this and what could be their motive?
Ernesto Lodano is one of 2 New York Times reporters who are reporting that U.S. investigators see Iran as the most likely answer for a couple of reasons.
The combination of the absence of a ransom demand, which is kind of what you normally see in these kind of cases, and what U.S. intelligence officials know about Iran's capabilities and possibly their intentions.
The U.S. has been warning of Iranian-linked cyber attacks on critical infrastructure for months. In retaliation for U.S. strikes on water desalination plants and other infrastructure.
It would surprise me if the Iranians don't take credit for this in the coming days, because they're trying to let us know that they can go after us in ways we hadn't thought of before.
Cybersecurity expert Bryce Austin says days before the Minnesota attacks, the FBI, EPA, and other agencies issued a joint warning about Iranian-affiliated hackers exploiting internet-connected controllers for things like water pumps.
They knew they were easy targets, so they went after them. It's the equivalent to leaving your car keys on the dash with your windows down, except I have a magic camera that can look at all the cars around the planet and see the 10,000 out of the millions and millions of cars that are in that state. Well, Apparently, we had 30 water treatment centers that were in a state that were known to be vulnerable.
We've since removed our system from, any public-facing internet protocols that, would provide an opening or a way in, so to speak. But obviously the question now becomes, well, how do we maintain this going forward?
Especially at a time when resources are limited and threats keep growing.
The good news with water is typically when you shut off the pumps, well, there's still water in the tower. So you don't remove service immediately. But the electrical grid isn't like that. If you disrupt an electrical grid, things go offline instantly, and that'd be a much more severe issue.
Minnesota Congresswoman Betty McCollum issued a statement about the attacks and the possible connection to Iran, saying it shows the urgent need for more federal cybersecurity help for local cities, counties, and small businesses. Right now, a St. Paul City Council member is calling for more transparency in the sexual harassment investigation into Mayor Kare. Molly Coleman saying in part the lack of transparency related to this matter is unacceptable. The City Council learned about these allegations and the hiring of the external investigators from the media. She goes on to say the mayor's administration should have informed the council as soon as the accusations were made. Meanwhile, in an email to staff obtained by Kare 11, St. Paul Police Chief Axel Henry reminded his officers not to let the news be a distraction, calling on them to continue being, quote, the compassionate leaders our community members know you to be. New today, some campfire restrictions are easing in the Superior National Forest as crews keep battling wildfires across northern Minnesota. Today, authorities say fires that started from a lightning strike earlier this month have burned nearly 65,000 acres of land. Right now, none of those fires are fully contained. Fire crews are asking anyone visiting Superior National Forest to avoid areas where they're working and stay off lakes where planes are gathering water. Across Minnesota, air quality is getting much better after reaching hazardous levels from the wildfire smoke up north. And now we're learning that smoke caused ER visits to skyrocket in the last month. The Minnesota Department of Health says northeast Minnesota saw a 28% increase, mostly from patients over 60 years old. Across the state, ER visits were up 6%. They say a new tool helped them collect the data, working with nearly all the hospitals in the state.
We do expect to see these throughout the summer, but it's hard to say exactly when they're going to happen or the severity. But in this case, it was very severe.
Researchers say while the fires burn, health impacts are something they are keeping an eye on. Tonight, we'll hear from two of the Republican candidates running for governor as we get closer to Minnesota's primary election. MyPillow CEO Mike Lindell, who was endorsed by President Trump, will go head-to-head with Kendall Qualls, who earned the state GOP endorsement. They'll debate on key issues facing Minnesota and the nation. That will be held by Twin Cities PBS Almanac starting at 7. A 13-acre site in the North Loop will soon be an urban data center after the Star Tribune sold its former printing facility to Legacy Investing, a data center company. Data centers have become controversial in many cities, including several in our area. Opponents argue they contribute to pollution, are loud, and use too much electricity and water. But officials say the footprint of this location could make it very different. Here's Ian Russell.
For more than 7 months, a once bustling hub of local journalism has sat unused. The former Star Tribune printing plant in the North Loop of Minneapolis printing their last headline here in December, a byline of a bygone era, but change is on the way.
It's really an exciting opportunity for the city.
Minneapolis Downtown Council President and CEO Adam Dunnick says plans for the 13-acre property include an urban data center, which are smaller than others.
I think this could be a really important both short-term investment in the infrastructure we need and a longer-term investment in the downtown.
These centers are also quieter, Dunnick says, adding that there's already proof of them working successfully.
You think about the water usage, it's much less, similar to a normal skyscraper or a commercial building. That's something that people have, I think, either preconceived notions about or they think about these data centers as these enormously large-scale projects in rural Minnesota.
There's already an urban data center here in the Sleep Number building in downtown Minneapolis, one of many urban data centers that have existed in the downtown core for quite some time.
And for me, it's the promise and an opportunity to look at what a mixed-use data center development could really look like.
Plans aren't finalized, but that could potentially also include housing.
Chuck Tai.
The Minneapolis Council put a moratorium on new data centers back in May, unless they're under 350,000 square feet and in the downtown core. This property, at 13 acres, is more than 550,000 square feet, so it's unclear exactly what this will mean for the project. A building changing hands in changing times, and one Dunnick says could lead to more for Minneapolis.
There's a real demand for electricians, for data center techs, for jobs in this area, and it's an opportunity for Minneapolis to lead.
In Minneapolis, Ian Russell, Kare 11 News.
We have reached out to the Minnesota Star-Tribune and Legacy Investing for a comment on the project, but have not heard back. The price of the sale has also not been disclosed yet, though property records indicate the space has a market value of roughly $20 million. Stick with us. More news and weather's coming up after the break.